All right, welcome folks to lesson 2.3, day 1. This is called standard form of a linear equation. So before we get into what that means, let's first consider a scenario here. Read along with me. A 100-point test has X questions worth 2 points apiece and Y questions worth 4 points apiece. So our job is to write an equation that represents how many of each type of question are on the test. So we know we've got our X and our Y representing each type of question. The next strategy that we talked about last week was identifying what information we're given. So are we given a y-intercept? Well, no, we're not. There's no starting value. Are we given a point? Again, no. There's nothing that says at this time there is this, or with this many points there is this. So the next question we have is, do we have a slope? Well, I see maybe two slopes. I see two different rates here. So it's like we have two rates here. Can we have a slope of 2 and a slope of 4? So this question might feel a little bit strange. Two slopes doesn't seem quite right. So this is where our standard form comes in handy because it helps us tackle questions like this. So standard form of a linear equation looks like this. Ax plus by is equal to c, where a, b, and c are numbers. So this one looks a little bit different than every other form we've looked at because x and y are on the same side of the equation and there's no m anywhere to be found. So standard form behaves just a little bit differently than slope-intercept or point-slope form because instead of finding obviously a slope in some point on the graph, we're finding 2 points, and those 2 points specifically are the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So let's review just a second exactly what those are. We know from all of our conversations last week that the y-intercept occurs where x is equal to 0. So we set x equal to 0, then we solve for y. Oops, excuse me. Solve for y. And then we get a coordinate point that looks like 0 and some y value. With the x-intercept, an x-intercept is very similar, except this time y is equal to 0. So we set y equal to 0. Then we solve for our x value, and then we get a coordinate point that looks like whatever that number is, and 0. So 2 coordinate points that are going to be really important to us here in standard form. So before we look at the steps to graphing from standard form equation, because that's what we're going to be focusing on today, I'd like you to pause here and go over and update your notes, and then when we come back, we'll go through those steps together. All right, welcome back. So let's talk about steps to graphing from standard form. So with both of our other forms, point slope and slope intercept form, we had 2 steps. Turns out we only have 2 steps here as well. So our first step is to find and plot the x-intercept. So remember the x-intercept is where y is equal to 0. So I'm going to take that equation. I'm trying to graph 3x plus 5y is equal to 15. So I'm going to rewrite that, except for this time instead of y, I'm going to replace it with 0. So this is really 3x plus 0 is equal to 15, which adding 0 doesn't do anything, so that's like 3x is equal to 15, or x is equal to, well, 3 times 5 would give us 15. So we get the coordinate point 5, 0. So we found the coordinate point, now we're going to plot it right on the axis 5, 0. Our next step is pretty similar, except this time we're going to find and plot, whoops, got ahead of myself again. We're going to find and plot the y-intercept. So this time when I rewrite it, instead of setting y equal to 0, I'm going to set x equal to 0 plus 5y is equal to 15. So 3 times 0 makes this 0 plus 5y is equal to 15. And if we follow this process through, 0 plus 5y is just 5y, and 5 times 3 is 15, making this y value 3. So we get the point 0, 3. So when I plot that, it looks right there. On the y-axis, I've got a y-intercept. The very last step here, I've got my x-intercept, I've got my y-intercept. All it takes to graph a line is 2 points. So that is our last step. We draw the line through both intercepts. So I'm going to use my ruler just so that I have a little bit of extra help here, but I'm going to grab my ruler, going to drop it right there. Oops. When I try to draw my line, let's try this one more time. Hopefully you've got a better handle on this than me. So I graph my line, there it is, goes through both points, and I'm all done. So we could call this 3 steps, maybe 2.5 steps really, because drawing that line, I don't know. But that's all it takes. We went from a standard form equation to a graph. So right now I'd like you to go back to OneNote. You're going to update your notes, and then you're going to try the next example down here by yourself. And when we come back, we'll check through that example, make sure you got it, and then maybe do a couple more together. All right, let's see how you did with this example. So remember, we're trying to find the x-intercept, so that's where y is equal to 0, and then we're trying to find the y-intercept, and that is, of course, where x is equal to 0. So I'm going to start with the x-intercept. So 2 times x plus 3 times 0 is equal to 12. So that's 2x plus 0 is equal to 12 when I multiply 3 times 0. 2x is equal to 12, and when I divide both sides by 2, x is equal to 6. So I get the coordinate point 6, 0. I'm going to plot that right there. Fantastic. My y-intercept, I'm going to have 2 times 0, that's my x value where I'm at the y-intercept, plus 3 times y is equal to 12. 2 times 0 is 0, making this 0 plus 3y is equal to 12. 0 plus 3y is a whopping 3y. And since 3 times 4 is equal to 12, that makes our y value 4. So we have the coordinate point 0, 4. So I've got my points there, my intercepts. All I need is the line that connects them. So I'm going to really carefully bring my ruler over there, do my very best to make this accurate. And there we go. That's all it takes. So hopefully that went well for you. If something happened, like maybe you mixed up where the 0 and the number goes on those coordinate points, go back and fix that now. Otherwise, we're going to run through a couple of examples together. So some of you might be having trouble keeping track, like which is the x-intercept, which is the y-intercept, how do I replace those points with 0, how do I know which one is which? I'm going to get confused. So my advice is actually to set up a little miniature table. This table is pretty easy to follow. It looks like this. X and Y. I'm going to put a 0 for one of the x's, and I'm going to put a 0 for the other y. So really, all I have left is to figure out like what goes with each one of those. I've got just a missing spot to fill in. So I can do that. If x is 0, 3 times 0 minus 4 times y is equal to 12. That would be 0 minus 4y is equal to 12. So negative 4y is equal to 12. And y is equal to -3. When I divide both sides by -4, 12 divided by -4 is -3. So I put a -3 in that position. I do the same thing for my other point, this time replacing y with 0. So 3x minus 4 times 0 is equal to 12. So that's 3x is equal to 12 because 4 times 0 is 0. And dividing both sides by 3, we get x is equal to 4. So really carefully, just because I think it helps, I'm going to rewrite both of these as coordinate points, 0, -3, and 4, 0. Because the most common mistake here is just plotting those points incorrectly, making sure that we actually are, on the x-axis when we're supposed to be and on the y-axis when we're supposed to be. But if we keep ourselves organized here and making sure that we're really precise with what we're saying, we're not just saying, here's a random x value, here's a random y value, but saying it goes with a 0, it is an intercept, is going to help us keep everything clean and organized. And we're done. So I'd like to do one more example before I set you loose on your assignment. We're going to use that same table method. So I'm just going to set that up. I don't have to know anything else but that there are 2 zeros in there. The rest is something I can figure out pretty quickly. So if x is 0, that's 0 minus 2y is equal to -6. So -2y is equal to -6. And when I divide both sides by -2, I get y is equal to a +3. Same thing, this time it's going to be x minus 2 times 0 is equal to -6. So x minus 0 is equal to -6. Well, guess what? That's easy. X must be -6. So I have the coordinate points 0, 3, and -6, 0. So I'm going to plot 0, 3, and -6, 0 very carefully. Then grab my ruler just like before and end up with a beautiful, precise line. Whoops, got to draw it in first. You're going to have a lot more practice with the ruler, and hopefully you're going to do better than me. So I look forward to seeing your lines. I can't seem to make my own happen right now, but there it is. Finally, we got it. All right, you can do this. So standard form is as easy as finding those intercepts, 2 points, and the line between them. So right now you're going to go back to OneNote, finish updating your notes, and then look at that practice assignment. Your practice assignment looks just like this. Remember, you can always work with somebody in your class. If you get finished, you can always look back at any missing assignments from last week, especially that assignment from Friday. So good luck. Come prepared with questions tomorrow if you have them. And otherwise, I think you're all ready to go.